September 26, 2019, Joe here at Simple Life Show. SimpleLifeRemedy.org is the website. Dave Rubin got shut down again at Mohawk College in Hamilton, Canada, by simply trying to have freedom of speech and interviewing a Populist party member from Canada, Maxime Bernier. And if you don't know anything about him, we'll talk about him and why this is important. Dave Rubin, if you don't know who he is, I suggest you look into him. He is a very widely popular, I would call him more of a libertarian constitutionalist that talks about preserving the republic and preserving freedom of speech, along with all of our God-given rights. And he is constantly put into the limelight of, and put into a box of, the neo-Nazis and obviously every hate group known to man. Of course, this is just a common tactic from the left to shut down freedom of speech, shut down any new ideas. And they're not really even new ideas. It's just preserving the republic and the constitutional republic of this nation. Now, Dave Rubin was supposed to be in Hamilton on the 29th to do a speech, to do a one-on-one with Maxime Bernier, who of course is one of the new upcoming members of the Populist Party in Canada. And a lot of people in Canada are actually taking notice of this. Yeah, a lot of people are getting tired of the two-party system. They're getting tired of all the politics. They're getting tired of the corruption. And this is what's happening in Canada right now. Of course, you will not hear this in the mainstream media. You probably won't hear that all these events are being shut down by Antifa. But Antifa rules with an iron fist. And whenever Antifa does not want someone to speak about something that's important, then it will get shut down. Now, Dave Rubin, he has not decided to back down on this. He actually took to Twitter, and he recently said, it appears that my event with Maxime Bernier on September 29th has been canceled due to threats from Antifa and this insane piece in the local paper. The school is now demanding 10 times the original security cost and could demand more before showtime. Now, this really means to me that he plans on going forward with this one way or the other. He has also decided to put forward the money himself out of his own pocket to cover the 10 times the amount. I mean, that's just kind of ridiculous. I mean, what's really going to happen? Hamilton is apparently it's full of a lot of liberals. It's full of a lot of Antifa type of right-wing hating groups. And who are they going to be fighting? They're going to be fighting themselves. They're going to be fighting the few people that do show up. Hopefully that this event actually does go forward. And there are people that can go there. But, when you have Antifa doing this, there's going to be a lot of people scared to even show up to this thing. And the populist movement is actually really starting to take hold in Canada. And Antifa does know this. That's why they are doing all this stuff. Now, if you don't know who Maxime Bernier is, there's probably a good reason why, is because we're so used to hearing about Justin Trudeau, because he is a leader of the liberal movement in Canada. And I believe that a lot of Americans really don't know what's going on in Canada right now. In Canada, of course, they have a first to pass the post. It's really weird, but it's kind of weird when you say it's first to pass the post type of elections. And if you don't know how this works, I really need to give you a kind of a type of education on how this works and why it's a bad thing.
This method of voting is most often called first past the post, awkwardly abbreviated as FPTP, or winner take all. The system is simple, fair, and logical, right? Actually, no. It's a terrible, terrible idea. Why? Well, to see the problems with first past the post, let's watch the first election unfold in the animal kingdom. It's an exciting time for the burgeoning democracy, and 7 hopeful candidates come forward to run and represent their parties. They put on their best campaigns, citizens head out to the polls, and the votes are counted. The results come in as follows. Turtle gets 9% of the vote, monkey gets 18, gorilla gets 19, owl gets 13, leopard gets 20, tiger gets 15, and snake gets 6. Under the rules of first past the post, leopard is crowned the winner and she gets to rule for the length of her term. But take another look at the results, and you'll see the first problem with this system, minority rule. The vast majority of citizens, 80%, wanted someone else as king, but leopard still won. There were only 7 candidates in this race, but if you imagine if there had been 20, she might have only gotten 5% of the vote, but still been elected. This problem of minority rule is only the beginning. The second problem with first past the post is that, given enough time, it results in an inevitable, unavoidable two-party system. Why? To see, let's watch what happens over several election cycles. Leopard has had her term in office, and it's again election time in the young democracy. Only now, all the citizens of Animal Kingdom remember the results from last time. This information changes how they'll behave, particularly snake and turtle voters, who must face the reality that they backed unappealing extremist candidates who don't have a chance of winning. Turtle voters, who were unhappy under leopard rule, decide to back the candidate who has the best chance of winning, gorilla. Now, snake voters want to vote for tiger, who is the candidate they have the most in common with, but they're afraid to because leopard is running a negative campaign against her competitors. Snake voters, not liking the idea of gorilla rule, vote strategically for leopard. The final result looks like this, with leopard getting 26% of the vote and gorilla getting 28%, making him the new king. Snake and turtle, seeing their dismal results and knowing the cost of their campaigns, decide to drop out of future races. What started out as a 7-party system is now down to 5. Fast forward to the next election. Only 5 candidates run, and again the voters remember what happened last time. In this election, it's owl voters who recognize that their candidate cannot win. They are centrist voters and less ideological than the rest of the animal kingdom. As such, they don't really like gorilla or leopard. Both gorilla and leopard know this, so they each run negative campaigns to capitalize on the fears of the centrists. Owl voters split their vote and are mostly voting against the candidate they dislike rather than supporting the candidate they do like. After this election, gorilla gets 33% of the vote and leopard gets 34%, making her the winner. Owl, as did turtle and snake before her, drops out of the race. In the last election we'll look at, monkey and tiger voters are unhappy. They both really like the candidates they have supported, but they now have to compromise. Monkey voters agree with gorilla on few issues, but they really don't like leopard. And tiger voters agree with leopard on some issues, but they really don't like gorilla. They strategically abandon their preferred candidate out of fear of the one they disagree with the most becoming king. The final results are leopard 49% and gorilla 51%, with him being crowned the king. Monkey and tiger are the last candidates to drop out, and now the animal kingdom is left with a 2-party system. Because of the centrist and swayable owl voters, in future elections, leopard might take the crown, then gorilla wins it back, only to lose it to leopard again, but the 2 parties never change. The citizens of Animal Kingdom ended up with the system, not because they are lazy voters or because that's what they really wanted, but because the mathematics of how the system is set up. Inevitably, given enough time, all first-past-the-post systems trend towards 2 main parties.
So yeah, I mean, we have this problem in politics. And we all know really what it is. It's choosing the lesser of 2 evils. I mean, we have seen this over and over again. We have chosen the candidates based on the fact that we don't like the other candidate. And the one candidate we vote for, yeah, we might agree on a few things, but primarily we don't really agree with them on everything. And it might be just a 50-50 split. So anytime you have a type of first past the post system, which you can even argue that we kind of have that same thing too, or at least we used to. We've evolved into a 2-party system now, and that's just the way it is. And anyone that kind of wants to mix it up, they're automatically demonized because all they are in essence are doing is taking votes away from one candidate they like to actually, in essence, elect the candidate they don't like. And this is why you see a lot of money from the opposing party actually flooding into a lot of these third-party candidates. And and the candidates has this, they've had this system for over the last 150 years, and people are getting really kind of tired of it. They're getting sick of it. They're getting sick of the corruption, and they're getting sick of the swamp, as it were. And of course, we're always going to go back to Trump and what Trump actually did. Trump was telling us and the people who voted for him and the world in a lot of ways that this was not going to fly anymore. That he is a populist, he's a nationalist, and he's basically kind of opened up the floodgates on what a lot of people are actually believe and what they're actually thinking. And it's not just in this country, it's every country. So this Mohawk College, this is the hit piece that Dave Rubin was actually talking about. And this hit piece comes from the Hamilton Spectator. Of course, this event was supposed to be in Hamilton. It's highly liberal base. And, they have put David Rubin in a light as the same as the fascist, as a hate group and all this stuff. They have also said that, Let me see here. David Rubin is a far-right YouTube personality and a significant part of the radicalization process, ushering people into the neo-Nazi movement, according to a recent published study out of Cornell University, which analyzed 79 million comments and over 330,000 videos to track its effect. Of course, David Rubin took to Twitter in response to that, saying, "Hi, can you point out my far-right credibility? Or how I've led anyone into the neo-Nazi movement. I've lost family in the Holocaust and grew up around survivors. You sniveling, pathetic weasel of a human." I'm sure he's responding to the person that actually wrote this hit piece on him. Of course, this isn't new for him. It's not new for a lot of the conservative voices out there. They're not only being shadow banned in a lot of social media, their accounts are being demonetized, if not completely banned, just for simply having the wrong viewpoint. Now, even my views are being shadow banned in a lot of ways, because even though I'm sharing a lot of my stuff, I'm not getting the views, and they're actually going away. They're actually being deleted. But this isn't about me. This is just about getting some truth out there. And if I can reach at least one person, that's all that really matters, because this is the kind of stuff that you won't hear in the media. Now, this entire thing, of course, revolves around the People's Populist movement that's happening in Canada. Of course, it's not as big as what you might seem, but as history has always told us, that some of the best ideas always start as grassroots movements, and this is no different. Maxime Bernier was recently interviewed about his positions, and of course he has. I'm going to highlight just a few main positions that he has. One of the things that he continues to talk about is the supply side problem. He says the dairy producers in my riding won't support me. That's a fact. They want to keep their privilege. Of course, he's talking about how a lot of the dairy farmers they support the conservative movements because there is price fixing. They can always choose. They can always count on the same price all the time. Of course, this is never going to work in a fair free market society, where it forces out smaller players. It's not fair to force Canadians to pay twice the price for dairy, poultry, or meat. He wants to basically give the Canadians more of a choice when it comes to their dairy and their poultry and their meat. He says we must change that, and we are the only party to speak about it, and that's true. There's a monopoly between the Liberals and Conservatives, and that's the same way it is in this country as well. That when you have a two-party system, they work together. It's like the WWE. It's all fake. It's all for show. And they're all really best friends in the end. And they're all there just to kind of screw the public out of any kind of real choice. So you have this populist movement happening in Canada. And Maxime Bernier thinks there's a good chance that he could pick up a lot of seats in October. October 21st is when the election is going to happen. Happens once every 4 years, just like it does here. I'm saying to the people in my writing that I'm ready. I'm the same guy. I want to work for you. I may pay a price for that, however, but that's doing politics based on conviction. It will be a little tougher election than I had in the past. I admit that, but I think I can win. He also goes into First Nations, and you don't know anything about First Nations. That is what they call the Indian reservations over in Canada. And they have what's called an Indian Act. And this is one of the main things I really want to talk about, because Antifa was protesting at a college called Mohawk, strangely enough. And they were protesting a man that wants to treat the Indians better in Canada. If you don't know anything about the Indian Act, it is a brutal act that was formed back in the 1700s, and it's still going on right now. There's a lot of things about this act that is just really disturbing. He says this is our first policy. This is our policy for First Nations, a principal policy based on principal respect and property rights on reserves. He's talking about Indian reserves. Our goal is, yes, to remove the Indian Act, but the challenge is, by what after that? That's why we'll have consultations with when we're in government, but our goal is to remove that. We want First Nations and these people to be like Canadians on a lot of points of view. Right now, that's not normal, that they don't have running water on the reserve, and we need to fix that. But it must not be imposed by Ottawa, a top-down bureaucratic decision. Our policy is based for a better future for these First Nations, at the same time respecting the treaties we signed with them. Of course, treaties when the first Indian Act went into effect. Now, if you don't know anything about the Indian Act, I suggest going to this website here, and I'll post a link in the description. 20 things you may not know, may have not known about the Indian Act. There's a lot of different things here. Now, this is what's called what is it? It's a permission slip that they still must do if they decide to leave the Indian reservation. Now, this is a lot of these things are really archaic. They don't really make a lot of sense. The Indians on these reservations don't even own their own land. If a woman is married to someone outside of the Indian reservation, then she loses a lot of her own rights as well. So, I mean, if you don't know anything about this, then I would highly look into it. This is something that is not in the mass media. They're not talking about how the Indians and on their reservations are actually treated in California, not California, California is almost the same thing, but in Canada. And I think it's really hypocritical, especially with Antifa protesting this, because you would think that they would want someone in there that really cared about the indigenous tribes of Canada and how they're treated by the Canadian government. They're not treated very well. They don't even have running water. A lot of people have spoken up about this, about the inhumane treatment and the conditions of the Indians in Canada. And I believe that a lot of Canadians are really starting to see the corruption. They're starting to see how both sides, not only the Conservatives but the Liberals in Canada, do not care about their own citizens. Now, we could go and with Trudeau and all of his racially insensitive things that he's done in his past, but that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Now, one thing that I did want to point out is the third thing that Maxime Bernier really talks about is that he's a populist and he wants to curb illegal immigration. And some might look at that and say, oh, well, obviously he is just taking cues from Trump. But, I think like what I said before, a lot of this populist movement is gaining a lot of ground. And the majority of Canadians think immigration should be limited as well. In fact, 2/3, 66% of them do. New polling numbers suggest a majority of Canadians believe the federal government should limit the number of immigrants it accepts, a public opinion trend that Immigration Minister Ahmed Hussein says he finds concerning. I don't know why he finds that concerning. 63% of respondents to the recent Ledger poll. Now, this was just a few months ago. 63% of the respondents to a recent Ledger poll said the government should prioritize limiting immigration levels because the country right now could be reaching a limit in its ability to integrate them. Just 37% said the priority should be on growing immigration to meet the demands of Canada's expanding economy. Hussein said he's concerned by this because he has heard directly from employers across the country who are in desperate need of workers. Economists and experts widely agree that immigration is key to meeting labor and population shortages. Okay, we'll just stop there right now. Let's evaluate that. What is he really saying? And what does this really mean? What this means is that the Maxime Bernier, who has a lot of goals and a lot of ambitions for Canada, and especially in his own riding, his own district, wants to put up a border between the United States and Canada. And I don't think that's a very bad idea, because the fact is that a lot of refugees, quote unquote refugees, a lot of people are going into Canada and they're doing it in an illegal manner, just like from our southern border as well. He never said that he was against immigration. He is against the illegal immigration, and this is we're seeing this echo across the globe. Okay, this populist movement is a good thing. It's all about caring for your own citizens. It's about establishing better trade with other countries. It's about growing your own economy and being strong. And we can hear exactly what he's talking about here.
Maxime Bernier says if elected, he would build a fence at the Canadian border to stop asylum seekers from entering the country at irregular crossing points.
We cannot be the welfare state of the planet.
The head of the People's Party of Canada also says he'd reduce immigration levels to 150,000 people a year. He says Canada can't afford to keep admitting 350,000 immigrants a year because the country must look after its own citizens first. I'm happy to welcome the People's Party of Canada leader himself to the program, Maxime Bernier, joining me from Ottawa today. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let's start with the fence idea. It's a pretty big border. Where would you build this fencing and what would it cost?
First of all, only where the illegal migrants are crossing our country illegally. So Roxham Road in Quebec, and that's a little fence over there. What I don't want our RCMP officers to welcome them. They're illegal migrants, and so we must be sure that if they want to come to our country, they have to follow our immigration law, and that's very important for us.
I think the correct term is irregular migrants, is it not?
They're illegal migrants. They're not crossing at the official point of entry for our country, so they're illegals. And what we want to do, we want to be sure that we'll help the real refugees that needs to be helped in other countries and where their life is in danger. I don't believe that these people who are crossing our border illegally in Quebec, I don't believe that their life is in danger in the state of New York.
It's not illegal to seek asylum, though, is it?
It is illegal to cross our border at not an official point of entry. So that's why we need to be sure that these people who want to cross our border will cross our border where everybody is crossing borders.
So that really kind of just breaks it all down there for you. Those are really the three things that I picked up from Maxime Bernier. I mean, he is a populist candidate. He doesn't have a lot of seats. He's only currently at one right now. So he has an uphill battle when it comes to the election. He knows that. He knows that he has a very small chance of gaining a lot of seats. And that's really what the argument is about from this first past the post type of election that's been going on for the last 150 years in Canada. And really what the argument is to get to more of a balanced representation, proportional representation there in Parliament for Canada. They really want to have more of a type of equal distribution of representative ideas and voices in Parliament that can balance everything out and get away from this two-party kind of monopoly that's happening. Because when we have a monopoly of just one or two main ideas from competing viewpoints, then all of the great ideas, they usually always get lost in the mix, and we know this. We've seen this throughout history. So Maxime Bernier, of course, like I said, Dave Rubin was supposed to have an event with him to celebrate him, to talk to him, to interview him, to have an event. I thought that was a really great idea because he needs as much press as possible. He needs as much support as possible because Canadians really want this. They are showing up in droves for a lot of his rallies, and I think this movement is really growing. This populist movement is really taking off, and we see that with the recent impeachment inquiries and all this stuff, and this calls for impeachment, the liberals and a lot of the rhinos in Congress and in our own government do not want this to happen. They don't want populism to grow because they are used to the status quo. And that is really at the heart of this whole argument, is giving more of a speech, more of a podium to people of lesser known groups. The libertarian group, the Green Party, and all these other groups. I think they should have all a representative voice in Congress. I think Canadians should have that option as well. Until next time, this is Joe with Simple Life Show. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.